defeat the wicked, so much that my feet were gone. But now I hold on to someone I know is strong. He my rock and fortress, I put my trust in Yahweh. Then you and me, that the whole world can see. Oh yeah, my King here, He protect us all, and He heard my call. No, yeah, Yahweh is higher. Is He Yah man to where He gotta lie? Is His ear heavy to where He will not hear? Is His arm shortened to where He cannot save? Cast your burdens down and give them to Yahweh. He much than you and me, that the whole world can see. Oh, Yahweh, He protect us all, and He heard my call. No, yeah, Yahweh, I used to worry about if my bills get paid. I used to worry about all of my enemies. I used to worry about if my friends would stay. But now I take my problems and give them to Yahweh. He much than you and me, that the whole world can see. No, my King gives, He protects us all, and He heard my call. Yeah, Yahweh is higher. I used to worry, but I don't know more. And I don't fall the things I've been through. You know He pulled me through. And I don't worry about man. I put all my trust in Yahweh.
Points here that I want everybody to discuss, because we're going to come into one of them. And one of them right now is, can we keep the Passover in this land? And we'll start our argument with those that say we can. Then we can get a comment before we go to the next one, but we got to
real quick, in reference to that day and night, I still go back to the first chapter of Genesis, where it says here that the Creator called forth for life. And that is, again, that word life here, core, not day. And it says He went on and He saw that the light was good, and He divided the light between the light and the darkness. Still ain't called darkness, no, it's just darkness. They said Yah, the Elohim called the light, or He called the light the day, yeah. And the darkness He called Lila. So we have to be able to, the day, if you look at the cycles of the event, you have night, the darkness first, then the evening, and it goes back to darkness. Now, even, we call it evening, but the word is even. Even is a time of the day where you have an equal amount of sunlight and darkness showing. So it was a way that we identified a particular portion of the day. We didn't have a clock. So it was a way that we identified a particular portion of the day. So my opinion is, quickly, is that the cycle was given to us in the first chapter of Genesis, starting from even and rotating to the next evening, going to the light of the next.
all right. Now, everybody happy? Now, we got to go on. Can we keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread in this land? Who says we can?
You say nobody can.
Yes, we did. We went past it.
Real quick, man. See, that was easy.
Can we keep the Feast of Weeks in this land? Can we keep the Feast of Trumpets in this land? All right, and someone said we can, and who said we can? And would you justify saying that you said you can?
Blowing of the trumpet. In Leviticus 23.
I should have said, does anyone say we can't keep the Feast of Trumpets in this land? Yes, please.
The word trumpet does not appear there. It's not to teach the trumpet. It says Zikron Kiruah. The day, remember the day of the North. That's what it says. You won't see trumpet, shofar, none of that in there. It says not the day of the trumpet or the day. It's Zikron, or it's Yom Kiruah, the day of the Lord. So I just wanted to offer that because if you read it in English again, there's that English coming back though. You're gonna see the day of the trumpet.
That's true. Can we keep the Feast of Tabernacle in this land? Can we keep the Day of Atonement in this land? Who said we can?
Can?
We can't. Can we keep the new moons in this land? Now can we keep the new moons as a holy convocation? We can keep them, but not as a holy convocation. I know, you can't keep it as a holy convocation, but it's not. But you can observe them, but not as a holy convocation. Now, and if we get through these fast enough, I assure you we'll let y'all come back and beat on us about some things that we reviewed in the past. Now, so you'll get a chance to come back because we're moving smooth.
Why are you singling me out?
No, I didn't. That's anybody. Now, the next question is, I gave my question to somebody else. How did I have number 11? Are we to observe the Sabbath when we cannot keep the feast days? In other words, to explain it, we'll say the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That is a holy convocation. That is a feast day. That is a holy convocation. It is also a Sabbath that's given with that, where we cannot do no servile work therein. I'm saying if we're not keeping that day, can we still keep the Sabbath without keeping the holy convocation?
From the teachings that I've received, what I have come to understand, we are not keeping the actual holy days, we are only keeping memorial of the holy days. So if the question comes to mind, memorial of these holy days, then my answer is yes. Now, if you ask me, can we keep the actual day? My answer is no. But if you're asking, can we keep the memorial, which means do all of the law that we can, that we're physically able to do, then yes, we must keep these days.
All right, so you're saying you can keep the Passover.
You can keep the memorial.
All right, by keeping the memorial of the Passover,
Yes.
you said you must do everything that you must do.
I'm saying you must do everything that you can do
All right, well,
according to the law.
all right, according to the law, what can you do on the Passover?
You can go out, you can get a lamb, you can kill the lamb, you can eat it, you can eat the bitter herbs, you can wait until the evening of the 14th day when the Eve goes out. At that evening, you can begin to do these things.
Show me
You can
that.
come together as a people.
Show me
You
that.
ask me a question. I'm
Yeah,
giving you an
and I'm
answer.
still answering.
You're asking me what of Passover as a memorial are
Yeah.
you allowed to keep?
Yes, and I'm
And
saying,
that's
give
what
me
I'm
the,
explaining to you.
yeah, you're explaining it, but I'm saying explain it with a law or scripture.
Let's go to Exodus 12 chapter. Now I'll read the 12th chapter again for the second time.
The whole, no, you don't have to read the whole
But you
scripture.
asked me a question.
Yeah, but I'm still answering.
In order for me to answer your question, Moreh, I would have, you asked to have it read to you. I'm going to read it to you.
No,
And I'm explaining to you that out of these things, there are certain things that we cannot do. What I explained earlier was that of the law that we are able to keep in this land, we must do it. We can't keep all of the statutes, and that's why this is only a memorial.
all right. Okay, so you're saying, well, I don't want you to read the whole chapter, but you're saying this 12th chapter explains
Everything
why
that you just got through
we
saying.
can keep the Passover today.
No,
Okay.
that's not what it explains. The 12th chapter explains the procedures for keeping Pesach, Passover.
Yeah.
Now, out of these procedures, there are certain things that we cannot do because we're in captivity.
What can't we do?
We don't have a priest, first of all. We can't make any sacrifices. That's another thing, because we're in this land of captivity. Very few of us have any animals, but we could go buy an animal on the 10th day. We could go buy one as a memorial and hold it up until the 14th day.
Good enough. And what he's first, and then you're next. And we're going to discuss that because this is very important, and it governs how we look at a lot of days. So we're going to introduce some scriptures to you, and you all are going to introduce some scriptures to us, and we'll see how you dissect those scriptures. Okay? But starting here.
I just like to say about the Passover, I just don't like the using the word keep Passover, because I think that's a poor translation. It should be performed, and that's a rite that you do with Passover. And that had to do with killing, sacrificing the lamb. So when you start talking about can you keep the Passover, perform the Passover, of course you can't perform the Passover.
You
Okay?
cannot.
You absolutely cannot perform the Passover.
Well, some saying you can't.
Who's saying that?
I mean, if I'm going to kill
He's saying you can kill a lamb and it's, he can go and, no, wait. While everybody yelling at poor Elesha. I'm going to tell you what this man told me, because I asked him. He said we can't keep the Passover, but we can meet the memorial. And I asked him how. He said we can take the ram out, buy it, and kill it, and eat it with bitter herbs. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Well, that meant that you're keeping the
Performing it.
If you can go out to the memorial, man, you got to be very careful about this.
Yeah, well,
the lamb. You better make sure that you're doing it right.
No, the difference that you're stating, I'm not sure of your name.
Okay, look, as far as when I'm killing the lamb, if I want to eat a lamb, I'd go to the store and buy the lamb. Okay? But I'm not going to go out in some field and pretend like I'm trying to perform a Passover. That's because that's ludicrous to think that you can do that.
All right, wait. Yes, I'm going to allow you to speak after him. But one thing I got to ask everybody. We've been here very nice, and some of the things that we say might not be agreeable with everybody, but we can't say nothing is crazy or ludicrous or, because we don't agree. We got to understand that people really see things this way, and they're going to keep seeing them their way until we show them out of the books of different. And until then, we got to respect everybody's point of view.
I wasn't. When I said ludicrous, it is. Excuse me.
No. We don't want no judgment on nothing that nobody's saying. We don't. I'm gonna allow you to respond in 1 minute, but yes, sir.
Real quick, because I agree with what Moreh says there in terms of this conception of keeping the Passover in that. I feel this reference to all the holy days, so we don't have to blanket the Passover. My opinion is that we can keep, or we should keep, every precept of that holy day that we are permitted to keep by law. That is, if it is saying that on the 10th, if it's saying that on the 15th day of the 7th month is Kal Sukkot, and we go to work that day, We make no acknowledgement that that day is a holy day. We know we can't sacrifice because of the law. But now we don't, in captivity, don't stop. And stop our actions on that day to recognize at this point in our year is something significant to us. Take that opportunity to educate our family, following, or whatever, to the concepts of that particular holy day. Then I think we're doing a terrible disservice. It's certainly not separating us from the Gentiles if we want to work on our holy days and not doing something separate and apart from the rest of the world. Reference to Pesach, particularly. Pesach is not a day. Pesach is two things. It's a narrow period of time and it's a sacrifice. By law, we know that we cannot sacrifice in this land. So that precept of Passover, I think that's what you're trying to say, that we avoid those things. Now, there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, what we do. In an effort to bring us to the...
That's not what he said.
Is that what you meant?
He said
I had
you
an
killed.
opportunity to
Let me finish what I was saying. Let me finish.
By the time I get started, the same thing happened.
All right, wait a minute. You're next, sir.
Let me finish real quick. In reference to Passover, we come together on that eve, which is actually the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we eat a meal that was the meal typical of the meal. Not the same meal, not prepared in the same fashion. Certainly wasn't a sacrificed lamb, but there's certainly nothing wrong with eating the same kind of meal that our forefathers ate, leaving Egypt, and in some kind of way bring us into the mindset that they may have been in when they left. I don't see no law forbidding us to do that. Furthermore, in the book of Esther, I believe it's the 9th chapter, I'll look it up real quickly, I didn't know we were going, but I believe it's in the 9th chapter of Esther, it states that, I think it was, not Mordecai, but Haman. Haman went to the king, and his petition to the king for the Medes to come against the Israelites who were in every province of the Medo-Persian Empire, which was from India to Ethiopia, which was all the known world at that particular time. And his thing was against them was, there are people, there are Jews, as they say, in the land, in every province of the land, that are doing their law as opposed to the law of Persia. What law could that have been doing that they were in captivity? So there must have been some semblance of holy days that were kept in captivity that we can still try to duplicate here.
Oh, very good. Cash?
Yeah, picking on Cash again. What I think we make a mistake on, when we speak about the original Passover in the book of Exodus, the original Passover was not, and I say it real clear so y'all can pull out the scriptures and find it. It wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't. It was the killing of a lamb. The only one that can make a sacrifice was a priest. At this time, in the beginning of the book of Exodus, at the time of the giving of this commandment, the Creator said, take it and kill it. There's a word in Hebrew for sacrifice, and that word is zavak. Okay? The only reference to zavak, of the killing of this lamb, is only mentioned in the 25th chapter, when it speaks about future tense, which shows that the priest would be the one in the future tense to make this sacrifice. It became a sacrifice in the book of Deuteronomy because we had our priesthood established. So it was spoken of in the book of Deuteronomy as a zavak because our priesthood was established. We don't have a priesthood now. So does that mean we don't keep the Passover? Or does that mean we do not make a sacrifice? There are two things stopping us from making a sacrifice. One thing is, we don't have our priesthood. The other thing is, because in the 12th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, the Most High says that there's a place out of all of your tribes where he chose to place his name. That place that he chose was not Jerusalem, it was the holy temple. Not the land of Jerusalem, but the temple itself. You'll find that information in the book of Chronicles. 2 Chronicles, 8th chapter, somewhere around the 25th verse. Somewhere around there. It's not Jerusalem itself, it's the Beit Mikdash, the holy temple. That's where he chose out of all the places. That's why we can't make the sacrifice. That does not mean that we can't kill the Passover, because that's what we're doing. We're killing a lamb. We're keeping a memorial of what our forefathers did. And the Most High says it, when your children ask you of this service, not of the sacrifice, but of this service being this thing that you're doing, then you ought to tell them what it is.
Yes, sir.
Yes, of course, this activity is clear. It was a sacrifice. And it even states that in Deuteronomy 16.
Deuteronomy 16 would say sacrifice.
As we got somebody else speaking.
I just want to show who this commandment is to. In Deuteronomy 16. The fifth verse, Deuteronomy 16 and 5. It says, "Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates." Meaning that we must take an assumption, according to that understanding, that this is just speaking of priests because they only could sacrifice. For thou mayest, speaking of priests, not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates, as Yahweh Elohim giveth thee, but at the place where Yahweh Elohim shall choose to place his name in. There thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season thou camest forth out of Egypt. Then it continues on. "And thou," still speaking of the priest, "shall roast and eat it in a place which Yahweh Elohim shall choose, and thou shalt turn it in 10 in the morning and go unto thy tent." And that's just not speaking of priests. That's speaking of all of Israel. This commandment was not just the priest. And when it says, "But thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates," the reason why I said that, because we did sacrifice the Passover within our gates. In Egypt, those were our gates, and that's where we sacrificed the Passover. And when did we do it? At the going down of the sun, at the season thou camest forth out of Egypt. And thou shalt roast and eat it in the place which Yahweh Elohim shall choose. Not at your gates, but at the place that I choose now. Because before you did it in another place. But now I'm saying you got to eat it, you have to roast it in the place that I choose. Now, the second point is this, that the Almighty didn't choose this place. Whether we agree with sacrifice and kill don't matter. Because you can't do neither here, because he didn't choose this place anyway. He didn't choose it for us to kill anything for the Passover here in America. He didn't choose for us to roast it here in America. Nor did he choose for us to eat it at all here in America, not for the Passover. And that's clear. He said only at the place that he chose.
As we want to give everybody a chance to speak.
But also,
Yes.
because I agree with Ashaya, also, it was called a sacrifice back in Egypt. In Exodus, the 12th chapter, starting at the 21st verse, he said, "Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel, and said unto them, Draw out and take you a lamb according to your family, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out of your door of his house until the morning. For Yah will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, Yah will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto your houses to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass when ye become to the land which Yah will give you according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep the service. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, What mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, It is the sacrifice of Yah's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed their head and worship. So it was called the sacrifice of Yah. The whole ritual that they did with that, the killing of the lamb. And that's what they called it in Egypt. And also, with the same perspective of my brother Shia, again, in this land, the Almighty is looking for obedience. And if it's obedience and not sacrifice, then he's looking for, then the most important thing is the law that thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover, except in the place that he chose to place his name. That's what's most important, adhering to that, versus adhering to anything else that we might want to conjure up in our heart.
Very good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I was going to point out some of the same things that others point out, but something I want to point out that is very clear in this particular verses, these verses that we read in Exodus, the 12th chapter. And I'm going to zero in right on the 24th verse. It says, and you shall observe this thing for ordinance to thee and thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, talking about a futuristic tense, when you come into the land, which I will give you according as he has promised, that ye shall keep this service. Because most people are under the erroneous impression that this is just talking about the first Passover. Well, it's not. And the service is speaking of it, the service is just mentioned in the 21st verse on down, where it says, then Moses called for all the elders of Israel, and said unto them, draw out, take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And then he's going to tell you how to do it. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. And I just wanted to highlight that fact that the service that is spoke of, the service is just read, because most Israelites teach that the blood on the doorpost only was done for the first Passover, and that's not so. And this proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that's not so.
Very good. Yes, sir.
I just also wanted to give a precept in Numbers, the 9th chapter. In relationship to that, we have to be real careful about the word keep, because as Brother Yehoshua was just stating, this was only to be kept in the land. And as we read in Numbers 9, the 2nd verse, it says, let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at its appointed season. In the 14th day of this month at even, ye shall keep it in its appointed season, according to all the rites of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof shall ye keep it. So if we were going to keep any portion, whether it be a memorial, whether it be an actual rendering of the Passover, we had to keep all the rites of that, and we had to keep all the ceremonies thereof in order for us to even say that we're keeping any of it. We had to keep it all in context.
Yes, sir.
I want to know, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
And my question is this. Since this is for, this here to me, it's like it represents a saving, a salvation. In other words, this is when we were coming out of Egypt, right?
Well, we were out by then.
You understand? That's why I'm asking the question, because
The original Passover was in Egypt.
the original Passover. Right. Then we would never have an original Passover again.
No, no, original.
Well, that was my question. So then there will be when we go into the land to keep the Passover, then it would be different. Am I understanding right? I'm just asking questions. I don't know.
Well, you're asking questions to brethren that are disagreeing on certain things. He might give you one answer, I might give you another. So,
Okay.
right now, we don't want to stand and answer your question. We'll let you have it answered by you just hearing the very scriptures that are used to answer it yourself. Anyone else want to speak on that? Yes, sir.
Okay, now, the Most High has specified the whole thing. In the 23rd chapter of Leviticus, they're all stated out as far as the holy days, Sukkot, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Sukkot, Shavuot. The days that are mentioned for us, excuse me, the only day that's not mentioned in the chapter. The other days are stated. All the rest have a date that's mentioned. Now, when those dates come, and we were in the process of getting an understanding of the calendar and the dates of the calendar, so that we would not have to rely on a Gentile, and that we would have our own calendar based on as is stated according to the law, which would mean that when the seventh month, the first day of the seventh month came in, which was Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, and the 10th day of seventh month came in, they were designated, specified according to the 23rd chapter as a holy day. Now, we had defined the holy day, which was kadosh. Kadosh means to dedicate. Some said set aside. Now, when that day comes on the calendar, is that a holy day regardless of what you're doing? Is that a holy day? On the earth, it's proclaimed because the Most High proclaimed it. So regardless of where you're at, whether you're in captivity or not, that day is proclaimed as a holy day. Now we find ourselves in a captive state. It doesn't take away the fact that it is a holy day. It only takes away the fact of what we are to do on the day. But you still, on a holy day, what is something that is similar to all holy days when we're using the word kadosh?
No word.
Set aside. Now, kadosh, if it's set aside, then that means you have to do something different on that particular day than you would do on any other day, because it's already proclaimed that it's a holy day. Now we find ourselves in captivity, but the day is still a holy day. The day is not in captivity. The people's in captivity. So now, if we set aside, when it states that you set the day aside by the usage of the word kadosh, when it states that you are to have a holy reading by mikra kadosh, then the things, are you to treat that as if you were to treat that as a normal day? Do you go about your business on that day as you would go about the business of a regular day? So something has got to be acknowledged on that particular day than the rest of the days of the week. Now, we've already stated that if you're going to set it aside, and these are the things that you, and we know that on the Shabbat day, that's kadosh. You set that aside.
I just want to inject the argument right now, not whether we should treat it different or do something different. The thing that we are dealing with right now, do we observe these days like grabbing the lamb and slaughtering it and eat it? Do we do that today? And that's what we're talking about right now.
The reason why
then when we get that, then we're going to talk about what can we do to keep it holy or separate by doing something. But right now, do you literally do it as it was done in the scriptures in this land?
But what I was hearing is that when that question, was stated, it became, can you do it or can't you do it?
Yeah.
Now, again, the next question is, what do you do?
There you go. That's what we hadn't got to yet.
So, what you do is, if you can't do it, then there's no what. There's no, you don't have to get to the question of what you do, because you're not doing it.
You can still do things.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the reason why I started from that position is because of the fact that we all acknowledge that that is a holy day. Now, when it comes to the things that you do on that day, okay, now I have to go back to the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy. That's where, because that's where I'm leaving. The Torah leaves out, and I'll let you.
And I agree with that 30th chapter.
I have to
go over one scripture. Wait, he got the floor.
It's not looking it out. Yeah, in that place, I thought you know.
That you spoke.
Where do you want to go with that?
But I was going to ask one question, and one question to the group.
Wait, no,
The 10th verse. Where you at? 30 and 10. So let's really, it should be 30 and 8. Start at 8. Okay, now, it says, and you shall return and hearken, or you shall, again, you shall hear, observe the word of Yah, and you shall do all his commandments, which I command you today. And Yah will make you plenteous in the work of your hand, the fruit of your body, the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of your ground for good. And Yah will again rejoice over you for good, as he rejoiced over your father. If you shall hear, or keep, or do, now in this case not do, but observe, to the voice of, or heed to the voice of Yah your Elohim, to observe his commandments and his statutes which are written in this book of the law, if you shall turn unto Yah your Elohim with all your mind and with all your soul. For this commandment which I command you today is not hidden from you, nor is it too far from you. So, this is where we are here in this captivity. If you have read, I didn't read the whole thing.
No, if you read the...
Yeah, I should have read the beginning, because no, the beginning 30th chapter. Let me take just 2 verses. And it shall come to pass when there are come upon you all these things, the blessings and the curse which I have set before you, and you shall reflect on them in your mind among all the nations whither Yah your Elohim has driven you, and you shall return unto Yah your Elohim. Now, this is where we are right here. We are exactly right here because we have been driven to these nations, and now all the blessings have come, and now we are in a state of the curses. And we have all, in some form or fashion, bethought ourselves. And we are all, the purpose of this particular conference here is the restoration of the sacred law, is to come back to the law, which is really, again, the hearkening or the observing of the laws. Okay? Now, it didn't specify, don't do this and don't. It said, when you do these things. Now, when you start doing these things, something is going to result. As a result of that, then the Most High will again respond. So, I see us here now at this point where we're trying to come back to and we are not there. By no means, when it comes down to the statutes and the ordinances, we are not nowhere next to any of these laws, but we are trying. We're trying in our own ways. We're trying to come back to each and every one of the laws that are stated. So with that, we are, when it comes down to the question of can we keep it? No, we can't keep it as it's stated there. We can't keep the law of or the ordinances that are stated in there. But what we can do is we can set that day aside. We can do the thing. We can set that day aside and keep it holy. Because that's what it says, kadosh.
Well, I agree with you, and I agree with Ezra. It's so good to agree with Ezra. Agreed on that. And I'm going to state my position on this very important issue, and then we got a couple of questions. I better let Levi ask his question before I talk.
Okay, real quick.
You know you're going to take a long time.
No, I'm very short with it.
Okay, I'm reading from the book of Esther, 3rd chapter, 8th verse in my book. It says, and Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed amongst the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, as the Medo-Persian Empire was spread from India to Ethiopia. Okay? Their laws are diverse from all people. Neither do they keep the king's laws, therefore...
Where you read that? 9 and...
No. Exodus 3 and 8.
Esther.
Esther.
All right, we with you.
Thank you.
What's that northern accent? One verse, I'm reading, that's all. You with it? Okay. Read the king. And Haman said to the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed amongst the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom. As I said, that's the Medo-Persian Empire we're talking about. And the references earlier that it spread from India to Ethiopia. Their laws are diverse from all peoples, neither do they keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king to not to the king's profit to suffer them to live. What laws were they keeping that were separate and diverse from the
They
king's
were in
laws?
captivity.
In captivity.
That's good.
Well, that's a good question, and I'll answer that during my presentation, which will be very brief as usual.
I'll say that.
Well, feel real good again. I agree with my brother and brother Ezra and the other brothers that spoke. I think that our job and obligation is to return to the Almighty's law. And we are thinking ourselves in a land of our captivity, and we must return to the laws, the statutes, the judgments, the precepts, the testimonies, and all of his ordinances pertaining to these laws. We should return. And but we don't return to the Almighty by disobeying his law. You can't do that. When the Almighty first set up the law of the Passover in Exodus, the 12th chapter, you notice when he deals with the Feast of Unleavened Bread, first I'm going to show you what he does with the Passover. The Passover the Creator deals with in the 12th chapter, the 14th verse. And this day shall be unto you a memorial. Ye shall keep it a feast to Yah throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. Now, if you hold that page and turn quickly to Leviticus 23, you're going to see that the law of the Day of Atonement is read almost identically like that one. Almost identically. And it states in the 23rd chapter, the 31st verse, almost the same words. You should do no matter what. It is a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. In all your dwellings. You don't see in all your dwellings pertaining to the Passover, nor the Feast of Unleavened Bread, nor the Feast of Weeks, nor the Feast of Tabernacles. But you will see it with the Day of Atonement. You will also see it with the weekly Sabbath day, which is mentioned in the same chapter, Leviticus 23, in the 3rd verse. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yah in all of your dwellings. The same word that is mentioned in Leviticus 31 about the Day of Atonement. The Almighty let you know your dwellings or your is wherever you live, your habitation. Another word for dwellings is habitation. When we were in Egypt, our dwelling was a place called the land of Goshen. That's where we dwelt at, according to the scriptures. That was our dwelling. And the Almighty said, wherever you dwell, you keep this weekly Sabbath, and you keep the Day of Atonement. Those laws was not given to the Passover, nor the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But he tells us, looking in Exodus again, the 12th chapter, dealing with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He tells us in the 24th verse, ye should observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye come to the land which Yah will give you, according as he has promised, that ye shall keep this service. So yes, we do keep that service according to the law once we get to that land that Yah has promised us. That's not Philadelphia, sir. It is not Mississippi. And it's not Atlanta. That is the land of Canaan. That's the promised land. He tells us in the 13th chapter. Notice what the Creator says in the 4th and 5th verse of the 13th chapter. This day came ye out in the month of Abib, and it shall be when Yah shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, which he swore unto thy fathers to give thee, a land flowing with milk and honey, that ye shall keep this service in this month. So he tells us precisely, exactly what he wants us to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And that is in the land of Canaan. Again, that is not Philadelphia. That is not Philadelphia. This is not the place where you're to make your sacrifices to Yah. This is not the place where you should go. But according to Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter, the Almighty speaks of all these days collectively. The days that we're dwelling with right now and speaking of in the 16th chapter of Deuteronomy. He tells us, all that want to hearken unto his voice, all that fear him and tremble at his words. He tells us about the Passover in the 5th verse. He said, thou mayest not. The word not means don't do this. So he's telling you that want to return to him to not to do a certain thing. This is his commandment in the book of the law. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of the gates which Yah Elohim giveth thee, but at the place which Yah shall choose, the place is named in, there shall I sacrifice the Passover, even at the going down of the sun at the season that thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt. And thou shalt roast and eat it in a place which Yah thy Elohim shall choose. And thou shalt turn into the morning and go into thy tent. So it tells us about the feast of unleavened bread. And then the Creator in that same chapter tells us about what we know as the weeks. And he tells us in the 9th verse, 7 weeks shall I never unto thee begin to number the 7 weeks from the such time that thou beginnest to put the sickle to the turn, to the corn. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Yah the Elohim with a tribute to a free will offering of thy hand, which thou shalt give unto Yah the Elohim according as he has blessed thee. And thou shalt rejoice before Yah the Elohim, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and maidservant, and the Levite that is within thy gates, and the stranger and the fatherless, and the widow that are amongst you, here again, in the place which Yah shall choose, has chosen the place his name in. So he tells us about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He tells us about the Feast of Weeks. And then in the 13th verse, he tells you about the Feast of Tabernacles. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, after that thou hast gathered in the corn and the wine. And thou shalt rejoice in the feast, in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant, and the maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow that are within thy gates. 7 days shall I keep a solemn feast unto Yah Elohim, again in the place which Yah shall choose, because Yah Elohim shall bless thee in all thy increase. And in all the work of thy hand, therefore thou should surely rejoice. Then it tells us in the 16th verse about all these particular days together. 3 times in a year shall all the male appear before Yah Elohim in the place which he shall choose, in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the Feast of Weeks, and in the Feast of Tabernacle. These 3 feasts are called pilgrimage feasts. That means we had to make a journey. We had to leave wherever we were at and go to one place and one place only to keep these feasts. Anybody that's doing it otherwise is breaking the Almighty's law. And that's not how you return unto the Creator, by showing your disobedience to him. And if you would like to know the place that Yah shall choose, if you look in the book of 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, he tells us the name of the place. Because there's only one place that he has ordained and agreed with Solomon that when we're in distress in the land of our enemies, and I'll show that in 1 Kings 8th chapter.
What would that place be?
Well, it's Jerusalem.
Show me that.
Yes, I'll show you that too. I'll show you that after I read this, that the place that he has chosen is Jerusalem. Now, notice in the 1 Kings, the 8th chapter, now I'm going to start showing you something in the 47th verse. Yet, if they shall bethink themselves in the land whether they are carried captive, that's where we are today, and they repent and make supplications unto thee in the land of them that carried thee captive, saying, we have sinned, we have done perversely, and we have committed wickedly. And so return unto Yah with all my heart and with all my soul in the land of their enemies, which led them away captive. And they pray unto thee towards this land, towards what land? The land is the land of Canaan. That's the land which thou gavest unto our fathers, and the city. What city is that? That's Jerusalem. The city which thou hast chosen. That's Jerusalem, sir, all through the book.
Right.
And the house, which is Yah's temple, which I have built. When we pray toward that land, toward that city, and toward that house, then hear thou their prayer. And notice what house. And the city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name. See, the house was never built for Yah. It was built for his name. It was built for the Ark of the Covenant. It was built for his name to dwell there. And that's where we were made to go and make our sacrifice. This house is in Jerusalem, sir. This is where we're supposed to go for those 3 pilgrimage feasts. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. And I'm telling you, right point blank, anybody that celebrates any other place is doing it in violation of the law, according to the book, not according to my opinion. Yes, Brother Tal.
There's also another reference, an important reference in the book of Numbers. If you'll turn there. Book of Numbers, the 9th chapter. For the sake of time, we can start with the 4th verse. And Moses spake unto the children of Israel that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the 1st month at even in the wilderness of Sinai. According to all that Yah commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel. And there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, that they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and before Aaron on that day. And those men said unto him, we are defiled by the dead body of a man, wherefore are we kept back, that we may not offer an offering of Yah in his appointed season among the children of Israel. And Moses said unto them, stand still, and I will hear what Yah will command concerning you. And Yah spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if any man of you or of your posterity, that's the generations to come after, shall be unclean by reason of a dead body, or be in a journey afar off, yet he shall keep the Passover unto Yah. And so the question should come to mind in your study is, a journey afar off from where? If I'm in Jackson, and we keep the Passover in Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm headed to Philadelphia on the Passover, why can't I keep it with you if you keep it in Philadelphia? So the question is, a journey afar off from where? The 11th verse says, The 14th day of the second month at even, they shall keep it, and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. 13th verse. But the man that is clean and not in a journey, and forbeareth to keep the Passover, even the same soul shall be cut off from among his people, because he brought not the offering of Yah in his appointed season. That man shall bear his sin. 14th verse. And if a stranger shall sojourn among you, and will keep the Passover unto Yah, according to the ordinance of Passover, and according to the manner thereof, so shall he do. Ye shall have one ordinance, both for the stranger and for him that was born in the land. So the scripture is clear. This point of law is clear. You can be excused from the keeping of the Passover if you're either defiled with a dead body or on a journey afar off.
Only for that month.
And I would like to
And
comment.
you can be moved to the second month to keep it.
We have a few people wanted to make comments. Ray, go ahead. You want to-
Oh, can I respond to what you said?
Yes, sir.
You made an announcement.
Yes, sir.
You read out of 1 Kings, the 8th chapter.
Yes, sir.
And you made it, yeah, I got a laugh. It was funny. I thought it was funny for myself. I gave myself a little laugh.
That's all right.
We don't do that sometimes, we go crazy.
I know.
So you read that out of the 1 Kings 8th chapter, and you say that this place was Jerusalem.
Yes, sir.
I'm not disputing that. I would agree with you.
Yes, sir.
It's just that the Creator didn't say what you listened. King Solomon requested. This is all a request or a prayer. This is just you can make a prayer, or if I make a prayer. And King Solomon requested that if a person prays, and they pray toward this place, or toward this land, as you specifically say, toward this land, or toward this city, or toward this house,
Yes, sir.
that you would hear their prayer. That's just a request.
Yes, sir.
The Creator answered that request.
Yes, he did.
He did. Let's go to where he answered that. 2 Kings, the 7th chapter.
No, it's right in the same First King.
Well,
Right, very
no,
next
he
chapter.
didn't answer the
Yes,
first
he did.
Where
Yes,
at
he
the
did.
1 Kings?
Right there in First Kings, the first verse.
1 Kings what? What
First
verse? What
Kings,
chapter?
the 9th chapter, starts at the first verse. First Kings, the 9th chapter, the Almighty answers him right there.
Verse 1.
Yes, start reading. You read aloud. Don't read it to yourself, because I like to see you laugh.
I'm going to read it to myself. I'm going to read it out
I
loud.
want you to read and laugh. Keep laughing.
And it came to pass, when Solomon had finished the building of the house of Yah, and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire which he had pleased to do, that Yah appeared to Solomon the second time as he had appeared unto him at Gibeon. And Yah said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built to put my name there forever, and my eyes or my ears shall be there perpetually. Oh, you saying,
Keep laughing at because you understand what's being said.
No,
don't you?
please don't do that. Hear what I'm saying.
Listen.
You said that it was the land, Jerusalem. I said a long time ago, it wasn't the land that the Most High placed his name in. It was the temple, the house.
That's not what we were that's not what you just said just then.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what I've just read. I have hallowed this house.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said the
No,
house.
you did not say that. Don't say that you said that because you didn't.
All right.
What I
Then let me
said-
say this. What I said the house.
All right.
He put his name
There's no
in the
reason
house.
to do
I
this.
did say that. Yes, sir.
I just want to give a scripture reference, if I maybe help out a little bit on this. Second Chronicles. Second
One minute before
Chronicles.
you start, we had a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You would recognize the hand.
I like to refer to 2 Chronicles 6 and verse 6. I'm just going to get right to the point.
There you go.
But I have chosen Jerusalem that my name might be there. And have chosen David to be over my people.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's all I have to say.
But when you choose Atlanta for your home, does that mean that you also have a house in Atlanta? And what to create, what he's doing in his in the 8th chapter there, is just delineating where it is. In this direction, and toward this city, toward this house. So if you notice it, your attention is being focused down to a certain point. So, again, you're not wrong. It's just that when Solomon was making, this is why he said toward the house that I has built for your name. So it's not any house in there. So, Solomon was focusing your attention right down to a particular location. So you're not wrong, but I think Solomon in the prayer was getting more specific gradually to where we're talking.
Yeah, I said in my brief presentation that it was the temple the Almighty put his name.
I can.
And I said, because that's where the Ark of the Covenant was, in that temple.
Then explain to me, if this is what you're stating, explain to me how we can go to the place where the Most High places his name, and anyone who lives in Jerusalem, we can keep the Passover in their house. Because that's what was stated to me earlier. I said it's not anywhere in the city. It was told to me that anywhere in the city of Jerusalem, you can go to someone's house who live in the city of Jerusalem and keep the Passover with them because that's where the Creator placed his name. I stated that is not where the Creator placed his name. He placed his name in the holy temple. That's where you have to go to keep the Passover. Now, explain to me now. I want to hear.
Well, in my presentation, I stated that it was in that land, the land of Canaan.
Yes.
I said the city of Jerusalem,
Yes.
the Almighty had a temple. Now, and that's where his name was at, that Solomon built for the Almighty's name. As far as the Passover, we had to be in houses in that city. That was the only place and the only houses that we could go to keep the Passover. We had to be in the house with somebody that lived in that city, I stated.
Is the Creator's name in that house?
No, it's not in that house. It was only in that temple. But the temple at the site in that land where the temple was at, in Jerusalem, that's where we had to go to somebody's home to celebrate the Passover. But the priests were at that particular site. They also made a sacrifice there. They made the daily sacrifice, the evening sacrifice, and a sacrifice of all of our feast days. They sacrificed it there at that place. But we were in homes in that city.
Where was the Passover sacrifice at? In those houses or at the priesthood?
In their houses.
So the priest didn't make
They
the Passover
also
sacrifice.
made a sacrifice at the temple.
Excuse me.
So we had two sacrifices there.
Excuse me.
The one at the house and the one at the temple.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
You mean common, ordinary folk was making a sacrifice to the Creator?
Yes.
Yes. Really?
Yes.
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 Exactly.
And to show you that we were,
Yes.
if you look in 2 Chronicles, the 30th chapter, now, I want to show you something. Starting at the first verse. And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Yehudah, and sent letters unto Ephraim and Manasseh, that they should come to the house of Yah at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto Yah Elohim of Israel. But the king had taken counsel. Let me finish.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Before you make a face, let me finish.
I'm sorry.
And the king had taken counsel and the princes and all the congregation in Jerusalem to keep the Passover in the second month. Now, the only reason they had to keep it in the second month is because they were unclean in the first month. Or many were in a journey of 4 the first month. Then we kept it in the second month. Now, notice what happened. For they could not keep it at that time because the priests had not sanctified themselves sufficiently, neither had the people gathered themselves together at Philadelphia. No, it said Jerusalem.
Hold it.
The king.
Hold it.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
And the thing pleased the king and the congregation. So they established a decree to make proclamations throughout all of Israel, from Beersheba unto Dan, that they shall come to keep the Passover unto Yah, the Elohim of Israel, at New York. For they had not done it for a long time in such a sort as it is written. So the post went out, and the letters of the king from his princes throughout all Israel unto Yehudah, according to the commandments of the king, saying, Ye children of Israel, turn again, like we're trying to do now. Turn again unto Yah, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remnants of you that are escaped at the hand of the king of Assyria. And be not ye like your foreparents, and like your brethren, which transgressed against the Yah, Elohim of our fathers, who therefore gave them up to desolation, as you see. Be ye not stiff-necked, as your fathers were, but yield yourself unto Yah, and enter into his sanctuary, which he has sanctified forever, which is at Jerusalem. And serve Yah the Elohim with the fierceness of his wrath, may turn away from you. But if ye turn again unto Yah, your brothers and your children shall find compassion before them, which led them captives, so that they that come again into this land. For Yah the Elohim of your fathers, Yah Elohim is gracious and merciful, and will not turn away his face from you, if ye return unto him. So posts went out from city to city through the countries of Ephraim and Manasseh, even to Zebulun. But they laughed him to scorn. What do you mean come to Jerusalem? I can keep it in Philly. I can keep it in New York. They laughed him to scorn. And they mocked him. What do you mean go to Jerusalem? Nevertheless, the Burks, meaning some of them, out of Asher and Manasseh and of Zebulun, humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. They didn't mock them. They didn't laugh at them. They didn't say we can keep it anywhere. Some of them were smart enough to say, listen, if the law says Jerusalem, I'm only going to Jerusalem. Also, in Jehudah, the hand of Yah was to give them one heart to do his commandments. And of the king, you only have one heart, and that's to follow Yah. And the princes, by the word of Yah. And they assembled at Jerusalem much people to keep the feast of unleavened bread in the 7th month, and is a very great congregation. And they arose and took away the altars that were in Jerusalem, and the altars that were in the sin, took them away and cast them in the brook of Kedar. And they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the 1st month, 2nd month, and the priests and the Levite were ashamed and sanctified themselves and brought in their burnt offerings into the house of Yah. That's what I meant, that when the people sanctified, they still had another sacrifice at the temple. And they stood in the place after this manner, and according to the law of Moses, the man of Elohim, the priest sprinkled the blood which they received at the hand of the Levites. Now here's what I was telling you about. For there were many in the congregation that were not sanctified. Therefore the Levites had the charge of killing the Passover for everyone that was not clean. Because if they was clean, they would have killed it themselves. But since they were unclean, then the priest took the charge to kill it for them. Notice what it says. To everyone that was not clean, to sanctify them before Yah. Well, you have a different opinion. I'll just keep the opinion of the book. That's all. Yes, I know. We're going to get everybody's opinion. We're going to start with you.
One couple questions. Are all Levites priests?
No.
Okay. So what it's saying here says the Levites were not sanctified, but the priests killed the sacrifice until the rest of the Levites were sanctified sufficient enough to help. That's how I read it.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, thank you. I respect. That's good. I respect you. I respect you. Okay.
The other issue is I have not gotten an answer to my question that I stated about Esther. What laws were they keeping in captivity that made them diverse. Remember, we're separate people. We're a holy people. We're a people separate from all other nations. And what laws were we keeping in captivity that were so identifiable as to identify us as being separate and defiant of the king's law?
Well, I said I don't let everybody answer, but I told you I'd answer that quickly. One of them is the Sabbath day that the Almighty gave as assignment to the people. The dietary law, circumcision, just to name a few, but I'll let them.
The king did not dictate the dietary law. The king did not.
No, but the people kept it though.
Yeah, but it says in favor of the king's law, in deference to the king's law. See, so whatever law that they were keeping was in opposition to the law of the land. Circumcision was not in opposition of the law of the land. A dietary law was not in opposition, particularly in the Medo-Persian Empire, which spread from India to Ethiopia. There were other nations that had all kinds of dietary laws. So it wasn't something as mundane as dietary law and circumcision. It must have been something obvious enough to be presented before the king as a threat to the stability of the country at that particular point in time. I submit to you it was the law that was the door.
There you go. But the law said, sir, don't keep it nowhere else. So I know they wouldn't breaking the law.
My second question.
But don't let everybody go ahead and answer
that question.
In 2 Chronicles 30, I like to read 3 verses. And I'll start at verse number 15. It says, Then they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the second month. And the priests and the Levites were ashamed, and sanctified themselves, and brought in the burnt offerings into the house of Yah. And they stood in their place after their manner, according to the law of Moshe, the man of Elohim. The priests sprinkled the blood which they received of the hand of the Levites. For there were many in the congregation that were not sanctified. Therefore the Levites had the charge of the killing of the Passover for everyone that was not clean, to sanctify them unto Yah. Now, I read this here, and I can understand that what he's saying, according to the word, is that verse 17, there were many in the congregation. Now, the Levites were not in the congregation.
Congregation of the Levites.
No. I'll explain what I understand. In other words, when we look and it says their mount in verse 16, and they stood in their place after their mount. That means according to their rank. But not only that, it does not say that any of the Levites, it did not make no exception when it talks about the Levites sanctifying themselves. It does not make no exception and say that some of the Levites sanctified themselves. It says the Levites. In other words, it didn't make any exception. It says, verse 15, then they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the second month, and the priests and the Levites. Now, it does not say some of the Levites, but it says the Levites were ashamed and sanctified themselves and brought in the burnt offering into the house of Yah. So,
now let me say this, because we're going on 6 o'clock and we're going to stop exactly at 6, because people got to get something to eat and go into town. They got to get back for the Sabbath, and we already pronounced that we're going to leave at a certain time. So there's a few other things I got to get in, and I got to expedite everything. Let me ask this. Do we all agree that the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacle can only be celebrated at the place Yah has chosen? Can we all agree to that? No or yes? I mean, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Who can't agree with what the Almighty said about there's only one place that He has chosen to cause His name to be at, and that's where we should sacrifice our Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacle? Can we all agree with that?
Sacrifice, yes.
Oh, you can't agree with that?
Yes.
You can?
I can agree with that. I would ask you one question. And that is,
Ask us one question.
I would ask you because you made the statement.
Good.
And it is a little confusing because Leviticus 23 and 21 uses the phrase all your dwelling in reference to Shavuot. Just what you understand.
Yes. Okay, you're talking about in the, you're talking about the Shavuot, what we know as the Feast of Weeks. Yes, but then he let you know in the character of those words that it was always in that land, because it was a certain time. That's we didn't know when it's celebrated, because it tells us. Let me get to the reading of that, then I'll tell you how I see that.
Okay.
We return to the book of Leviticus 23. 23rd chapter. Notice that in the what verse I want to start at the 9th verse. And Yah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them. He starts it off like this. When ye come into the land which I will give you, and ye shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest. So we know the setting there that he's speaking of this day was actually in the land and nowhere else. And then he goes on, and ye shall wave the sheep before Yah to be accepted for you. And that's where the priest was at. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it, still only in that land. And ye shall offer that day, when ye wave the sheep of a lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Yah. And the meat offering thereof shall be of 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, and offering made by fire to Yah for a sweet savor, and a drink offering thereof should it be with wine, the 4th part of an hin. And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green herb, into the selfsame day that I brought an offering unto Yah, meat unto Elohim. It should be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. That means wherever we lived at, we had to do that here in that particular place. See, whereas when he spoke of the Sabbath day and the Day of Atonement, he did not restrict them to the land as he did with the Feast of Weeks. And that's why I did not regard that as the same as the weekly Sabbath.
I think that wasn't the verse, that was verse 14. Down here in verse 21, I'm wondering, it says, you shall make a proclamation on this same day, the holy gathering of you, there should be no work of service, and there never any statute in all your dwellings throughout your generation.
But he's still talking about the same thing.
I understand that, but you had previously stated when all your dwellings means everywhere you dwell, no matter where. So
I said about the Day of Atonement and the Sabbath day. Those are two. I didn't mention this because I had already read about the restrictions of this law.
I understand it, but does this mean at verse 21 that even if you cannot have these other things, that in all your dwellings that you can have a holy gathering and you shall do no work?
No. And the way, yes, sir.
Yeah,
And
that's the other side.
I'm just asking. Well, see, my opinion, and I wanted to say this because in response to what he said, I think we should do something all with these days, and we shouldn't act like it's another day. And we don't. And we gather ourselves together all of these great feast days. But when we gather together, we do it because of our respect to the Almighty's laws. But we don't say it's a holy convocation and that you are commanded under the law to be there. Because the only time we had a Sabbath is for a holy convocation. And if you couldn't keep the holy convocation, there was no Sabbath. That is.
All this time, all this time, and we in agreement.
Because that's what essentially
Hallelujah.
That's essentially what we were saying.
No, we disagree with Cash. He the one who killed that little lamb.
But you
And
said,
started that.
I'm
I'd just like to make a point that wasn't made earlier, and this was, in the keeping of the laws that written in the book of Esther.
Yes.
There was specifically one law for sure that the king and his people did not keep, and that was the laws concerning the worship of the Creator, Him only. The first commandment. The first commandment was obviously a commandment that our people was keeping, that we would bow only to the Creator and to Him only. And it was obvious that they didn't, because when it came down to who was who, Haman got hanged.
Well, if you look at the text here, it's in the plural. And again, it would very clearly indicate that we're not talking about one law here. We're actually talking about a society that was existing within a society where you have, and so I'm saying that it must have been obvious enough, prevalent enough of laws to come to the attention of the king, and for the king to issue a death sentence to all those that didn't give up the law.
Well, that's so much, associated with keeping the first commandment. And let's face it, we're just separate and distinct from other people in this land because we choose to bow only to the Most High and no one else.
I'm not disputing that. That's probably one of the primary one that we're talking about, but I'm submitting to you that there were others besides that were concerned.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and it points that out in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter.
Did you read it for us?
In the 4th verse it says, "But ye that did cleave unto Yah, your Elohim, are alive, every one of you this day. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yah my Elohim commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great who have Elohim so near unto them, as Yah our Elohim is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day? And it was the law, the statutes and the judgments that the Creator spoke to us in Mount Moreh. This different, just keeping these laws. And you can even see it in this captivity. If you're a man that don't steal, you're a man that don't commit adultery, if you're a man that don't covet, you're unique and different to the extent that people will want to persecute you for it. And just the keeping of the law would just set you apart. And even the fact that we had Elohim near us frightened the people when we came up out of Egypt. Some wanted to fight against us. Some came and secretly and deceptively made covenant with us just because Elohim was so near unto us. So we can see that the totality of the law clearly in the law lets us know that it's the totality of keeping the law. Keeping laws like thou mayest not keep the sacrifice except in the place where you choose to place his name at. Those laws in their totality has made us different, special, and great in all the eyes of the nations. And unfortunately, that makes people want to persecute you too.
All right, let me say this. We're going to have a vote on everything we discussed, but there's 2 other laws we got to get within the next 30 minutes. And I hope everybody be considered. And I'm going to be considered and called on Brother Ishaya real fast and Brother Zerubbabel real fast to make some comments. And then I got to get these other questions in, okay? And then we can vote. But we're running good. We did all this with the blessings of the Almighty, and it looks like we can do it within our framework. Yes, sir.
1 minute. And just to reiterate what Ezra was saying, we're not unique when we eating lamb, breaking bones of lamb, but yet teaching the people this is something that we're not supposed to do. We're not unique by telling the people that we must keep it at a certain place, but yet we keep it in an opposite place. We being just like the other nations, such as the Jewish people, who have adopted our laws and principles, but breaking every one of them. So we're not being unique. And the Creator admonished us for adding or taking away from His law. And we have to keep His law intact because it's perfect.
All right. Ravel.
Okay, in that, you quoted in the book of 2 Chronicles, the 30th chapter, and you brought up the fact that the people themselves made their sacrifices.
No, I said they were going to do it, but they couldn't because they were unclean, and the Levites did it for them because they were unclean. That's what I stated.
Okay. Can you show me another place in the Torah where the people at Jerusalem did a sacrifice?
Well, sure. I'll be glad. One way you're in Chronicles, you can go to the 35th chapter. Then we get right in and Samuel. That's all over the place.
So what was that now?
Yeah, that's 2 Chronicles, the 35th chapter. Josiah kept the Passover.
Killed the Passover.
Well, we call it kill the Passover.
That's what you said.
Or form the
Well, I was
Passover.
trying to get a clarification on the sacrifice because I've always thought the only one that can make sacrifices was the priest. Now,
No, with the Passover, we could. The people made the sacrifice of their Passover. And the priests made it also in Jerusalem at the temple, but we made it in the house. Yes, sir. And you can look in by King Josiah in the 35th chapter. The first few verses, you can read that he kept the Passover. Moreover, Josiah kept a Passover of the Yah in Jerusalem. And they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month. And you can go ahead and read the people. He didn't do it alone.
Okay, well, you know, think about it.
Well, that whole chapter, he just told me to show other places where they kept it in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And then I believe there's a place in 2 Samuel. What did you ask me, sir?
I wanted to know, could you show me where the people themselves made a sacrifice in Jerusalem other than what you showed me in the book of, what was that, 2 Chronicles?
Well, when you read 1 Chronicles, the 30th chapter, you read where Hezekiah did it according to the law. And the Almighty favored him. You read that. And that's all in there. Now, I might not show you. I'd have to look we're not in speech contest. I'll look and see for you in my notes if I can find specifically where the people did it again in Jerusalem. You know, I'll look, but right for time's sake, I don't have time to look through my notes right now, but I will come back to that.
Seven verse, the same 35.
Same 2 Chronicles 35 and 7. Would you read it?
2 Chronicles 35 and 7.
Would you read that?
And Josiah gave to the people of the flock lambs and kids, all for the Passover offerings, for all that were present, to the number of 30,000 and 3,000 bullocks. These were of the king's substance.
He gave it to the people.
And why did he?
All right, now listen, I got some other questions that I got to ask to get this on. All right, now, a couple other questions I have on the floor. And one of them will be very quickly. That is, the 12th verse question is, how many ways can you break the laws governing the Sabbaths and our feast days? How many different ways can you break them laws other than just not observing it? And you say there's 2 ways. And what is the 2 ways
I
you
would
break?
say doing something that is not in the law and not doing the law at all.
All right. Well,
That's right, move on.
yes. Well, I brought to
I want to do it quick.
the General Assembly yesterday that there was 5 ways that I found out that you can break any law. All laws can be broken 5 different ways. One way is by actually not observing that particular law. Another way you break any law is by Deuteronomy 12 and 32, and that's by adding or diminishing. That's three ways right there. Anytime you add, that's another way you break. Anytime you diminish, that's another way you break. That's three ways you break the law. Another way you break all the laws is mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy, the 27th chapter, the 26th verse, when it says, "Cursed be he that confirm not all the words of this law to do them." So anytime you're not confirming all the words of a particular law, that's another way to break that law. By you just merely not confirming it. In other words, I say, no man, you can sleep with that woman. She ain't nobody's wife, and even if she is, that law was done away with, and he sleep with her. Well, that's a sin to him. But I cause him to break that law by not confirming the law with him. That's what he said to you. Yes, sin to me. And then the last way I found, it might be others, but I only found 5, that you can break any law, and that is by, what is so big? I thought it was another way is by a false report about any law. In other words, and where is that at? That's in the book of about the false report.
23rd chapter.
Exodus, the what?
23rd chapter, 1st verse, I believe.
23rd chapter? No, false report. No, that's Deuteronomy 17. Yeah, 17 or 19th chapter. It's in Deuteronomy. The 17th or 19th chapter. Let me see. Oh, yes, it's in the 19th chapter. These start at the 16th verse. Now, this is the way that you become guilty of almost any sin you lie about somebody else. It says in 16th verse, "The false witness rises against any man to testify against him that which is wrong. Then both the men between the controversy shall stand before Yah, before the priests and judges which shall be in those days. And the priests shall make diligent inquisition, and behold, if the witness be a false witness, and is testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he thought to have done unto his brother. So shall I put evil away from amongst you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no such evil thing." In other words, if I say this man, I seen him commit adultery, and he really did. Or I seen him kill a man, he really did. There is no dead man. But I testified falsely that he did kill somebody. Even though nobody died, and they found out that I lied, and he would have died had he committed that sin, that means that I now will die for that sin. I die with the faith.
Pick a better example. Point well taken.
Yeah, you know, and I'm just saying, so we got to watch how we handle these laws, because there are ways we can break these laws without actually breaking it in our observance. In other words, if we add something to this law, or we take it back, something out of this law, and say, well, it don't mean nothing about the place that y'all choose now, that don't matter. I mean, all these places is good, and it's really not. And there's only one in one place, then we actually have sinned already. Yes, sir.
Just one more thing to add to that. Another way we break it, it's not being the watchman to the house of Israel. Because the Creator said once we have His law, we're supposed to warn the people. And if we don't warn the people, then the blood gets on our hands.
Yes, that's back. Cursed be he that confirmeth not all the words of this law to do it. That would fall in that category. That's that law the Almighty said. He didn't confirm the words, so the people could hear and do it. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention that that law is also, that you spoke of, is also in Exodus 23:1. And it says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness."
Yes. No, we're not taking nothing from the audience right now. And what I say? Well, that sounds good. Not right now, really. Don't ask right now, because we got to go through something. I don't have no time for the comments of any outsiders right now until after we finish. Then we're going to get everybody's responses that's sitting out there all this long time. There's two other very important laws that we have been confronted with. My dear sisters from Eulin, Illinois, gave me a paper today. Matter of fact, I never got my paper back. The last time one of your brothers had it.
I bought it in here.
All right, there we go. Pass me my paper. And in this paper, it has a lot of the brothers and sisters confused about the Sabbath day. And they were saying on the Sabbath day that we are not in this literature to go out of our houses, to walk, to travel, to drive, to do anything. As a matter of fact, we're to stay home because we can't have a holy convocation by leaving our houses. And I know that y'all don't need to sit up all night to study on all that. Y'all have many proofs to prove that you must travel to have a holy convocation. And one big proof to let you know that we traveled to have a holy convocation. And when the new earth and new heaven is established, we are still traveled to get to a holy convocation. All you have to do is look at Isaiah 66. Now, we know everybody didn't live in Jerusalem. Everybody know that. And we know everybody can't live in Jerusalem, not the whole world. But according to the 66th chapter, the 23rd verse, it reads, "And it shall come to pass that from one moon to another, and one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come." That means they got to go. They got to travel. They got to journey. "They shall come to worship before me, said Yah." So they're all coming there to worship on the Sabbath. And not only the Sabbath, and of course, as I said, all the feast days are Sabbath. In the book of Zechariah, around the 13th chapter, you see that all nations got to come up to Jerusalem to keep what? The feast. Let me show it. I'd like to show that.
You know it's just going to be the Sabbath because the gate going to be closed all the other 6 days. So only the 7th day is the only day you can travel.
Yeah. And then according to Zechariah, that's a very good point, the 14th chapter rather. I'll start at the 14th chapter, the 16th verse. 14th chapter, Zechariah, 16th verse. "And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up year to year to worship the King, Yah of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacle. And it shall be that whosoever shall not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King and a host, even upon them shall be no rain. If the family of Egypt come not, they shall have no rain, and there shall be the plague wherein Yah will smite the heathens that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." So it's letting you know they got to travel. They got to come. All over the world, annually, they will come to keep the Feast of Tabernacle only in Jerusalem, all the nations. And all the nations of people will come up to keep the Sabbath in Jerusalem and in the Moses. So you have to travel to do that. Then the second point we'll answer for your congregation. The question is that, does anybody disagree with that and have the other things to add?
Yes.
Which one was that?
That was 2 Kings 4th chapter.
Would you read it?
Yes. 4 and 22. "And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of Elohim and come again. And he said, Wherefore will you go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. and she said it shall be well. So this indicates that they were accustomed to going on the new moon and the Sabbath, traveling to see the man of God.
And that almost answered the second question.
Right.
And that the question was, can they preach and teach on the Sabbath? And I told you last night that that's the day they came to preach and teach. That's the day they learn the truth, they hear the truth at the priest's lips. There, and this confirmed when they coming, they're not going to just stand there. That's when they got through teaching. So this thing, as I went over, is ridiculous, wrong. I'm sorry. It's good to train a puppy. It's good. House breaks your dog. We have an elder in the corner.
Shalom alaikum, Cole. Just going back to where that law is mentioned, that often we refer to as that even in days and times like now that we should stay in on the Sabbath and not travel on the Sabbath. That law comes right in the law with the mind. And that reference was made there because we were being particularly disobedient at that time. You know, Father said, don't go out. It won't be there on the seventh day. Don't carry none over, or it's going to breed worms, or on the seventh day you could carry double over. That law was given to us because of that particular time.
All right. We're moving good. We got 15 minutes left. And those in the audience that want to make comments now, that want to have questions, that want to ask us questions about these holy days, maybe something we didn't cover, it's your turn now, because we're going to vote in about 10 minutes. So you got about 10 to 12 minutes. And let me say this about everybody that's sitting there. I really admired your undivided attention, but I don't admire your scholarship. Most of y'all didn't take notes. You didn't look in a book. You didn't write no notes. You can't learn like that. Not when you're hearing the Almighty Word. Yes. We have a question or comment. Yes.
When you said it was 5 ways you could break the Almighty law, I just wanted to add one that you made that when Creator said go by line, precept by precept. If you don't do that either, that's breaking the law.
Yeah, that's
I was
not.
in agreement with that.
Yes, that's true. But they got to be line upon line, precept. They got to be just according to the line. That's not adding, nor taking away. That's walking a straight line. You can't put nothing, nor take nothing away. It got to be just the way it is. And that's when it said, thou shalt not add, nor diminish. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, there's something I wanted to bring out when the discussion was about evening being, dark, if it's okay if I can comment on that. And I wanted to bring out Leviticus 22 and 7, Deuteronomy 16, 5 and 6, Deuteronomy 23.
We just read one of them, sir.
Just read one of them? Sure. I'll do Deuteronomy 23, and then, verse 11. And it says, I'm going to start at the 10th verse. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanness, that chanceth him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp. He shall not come within the camp. But it shall be when evening cometh on, he shall wash himself with water. And when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. Letting you know that evening was before the sun went down. Because then when the sun's down, it starts.
Yes, sir.
What we had said on that, brother, even what we had said on that even was a particular period of time in the day where you have people amount of sunlight and darkness showing you that particular time. So we can in fact right. Remember, we didn't have clocks and things of that nature, so we identified points in the day. Even with that point in the day, we have people amount of light and darkness.
We got time for a couple more comments from the audience, and then we're going back. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask, in the list that you had, for the different holy days, I was going to ask as far as Purim is concerned, is that going to be, right, I might be saying it wrong.
We didn't discuss that.
I know, I'm asking, is that
a holy convocation?
Right,
No. It was not a holy convocation that was pronounced by the creed.
What's the question?
Pure.
Yes,
Holy convocation.
So I'm saying we should not acknowledge that yearly at all.
Well, if one wants to acknowledge it, there are no laws restricting one from acknowledging it, just like there was no laws from restricting one when they start keeping it. They start celebrating it because their brothers were saved, and they rejoiced, but they did not break a commandment. You know, but I'm stating that it's not a holy convocation. But they didn't break it when they started, and they wouldn't break it if they stopped. In my opinion, my humble opinion. Yes.
The proof is in the scripture that Brother Moshe had mentioned earlier, where the Creator knows the end at the beginning, and certainly if He knew that our people were going to invent Purim and try to keep it as a convocation at the time that He gave us the holy convocations in the book of Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, had Purim and Hanukkah been for us to keep, He would have given it to us then. Because we had not kept tabernacles and we had not kept first fruits or Day of Atonement at the time that He gave us Leviticus 23, to my knowledge.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you really did answer my question about that thing. I really did enjoy that because Hezekiah had already, he had been up to the room dealing with just all the things that you said about it, which you confirmed everything that she had said, and I know she had probably got it, from her class. Okay, and the next thing I want to ask this one question. The Bible states a day, I'm not talking about light day or dark day. I'm talking about a day. Is that right? Evening and morning. I want to know, is that true, the two parts?
That's it. According to my recollection in Genesis, it says evening and morning, one day.
Right.
Yes, also, as Moreh also said, even though it words evening and morning, each one of those portions of time begins a light, it begins the light and then the light ends. The word morning comes from the Hebrew word meaning dawn of light, which means the beginning of light. So when he said evening and morning was the first day or the second day, he was telling you that this was all describing light. Morning, he meant dawning of the light. Evening, he meant the diminishing of the light. And then he separated. He said he separated the day from the night. So the darkness was called.
In the Hebrew language, it says evening and morning, not first day. One day.
Right.
So in the one day, so El Tide, so it's telling you this is what makes up a day.
Right.
So what you said was exactly what the Bible is saying. What you said, evening and morning. One part is dawn, is light part of it, and the next
is the morning.
Is the morning. And that would have to go all the way down until dark, till the sun go down again, or evening.
Yes, the evening is the last portion of the light.
Of
then
dawn.
the night is.
Let me say this. I know there's several hands up with comments, and I know they're very beautiful, and I love to hear them. But it's 5 minutes to 6, and I made a promise I was going to do something. And we're going to be out of here at 6 o'clock. And we can ask Yehoshua, after we finish evening, going out, and maybe can we come back at 9 and talk? So if y'all want to come back for some other questions where we can just talk and jump about all this, we can say at 9:30 after everybody went and got something to eat and come back. We can meet at 9:30 maybe for an hour. But right now we got a vote on the floor and we got to take care of that right now on the various issues that we discussed for the last 2 hard fought days. All right. Yep.
May I ask a question before we
yes, you can ask a question, but don't make it long, please. Not right now.
I'll do my very best.
Yes, sir.
And it's voting. Is it per community, per congregation, or is it gonna be who's ever in the room? Because you can be from any congregation you want. If I got more members, I'm gonna get outvoted. You're gonna get outvoted. So that's what I'm asking. Is it gonna be per Knesset, or per school, or per state? How are we gonna use, what's the parameters?
That's good, good thing, I'm not per country. Now, what we're gonna do is per organization, like if you have 6 teachers in an organization, they would not all vote. One for each particular organization. There's some organization where 2 different schools came together, and then you might have 2 different votes. But where there's 1 school and 1 main teacher, that's all we have, regardless how many other teachers.
If 2 schools came together, that's 2 votes?
Yes, if they got 2 different teachers there. Now I know, like for Hetzibah, they had one time they had 2 or 3 schools, and they all decided to come together. But for point, so we all be fair and be no conversation, just 1 for everybody. How about that? All right, good. Now 1 vote, and the votes are only from the leaders that were here on these discussions for the last 2 days and heard all of the various arguments. Now, some of y'all came in late and you didn't hear these arguments, and it would be fair, you understand, for you to voice your opinion on something you did not participate and learn the various points of views from. So right now, the first one, dealing with how do we observe the Sabbath day, we all agreed that we should keep it holy, no part. But then we dealt with the Sabbath day. Can we, before we got the cook, we had something more important. What was it? Can we purchase? There you go. Can we shop on the Sabbath day? Buy and sell on the Sabbath day. Now, how many say that we can buy and sell? Raise their hand. We can buy and sell.
Buy and sell.
Yes.
Buy and sell.
Well, let's do it. How many say you can buy it? Are we going to do it now? Okay. How many say you can go out and buy it on the Sabbath day? Raise your hand. All right. We got 1. How many say you can't? Raise your hand. All right. Now, how many hands are the leaders up?
Could you repeat that question?
How many said that we can't buy on the Sabbath day? Can't go out shopping on the Sabbath day? Raise your hand.
Cannot?
Yes. You've been in enough discussions, yes.
I have?
No, I really, when did he get here?
Oh, you know what? I just walked in like 15 minutes ago.
Good,
They were just
good.
talking about bearing the false
Good.
witness. Just finish that. See, I gotta warn y'all.
Well, then, we
I did just walk in.
decided we can't do that. Now, so we continue, for my time is running out, please. Everybody give me the undivided attention. How many says that we can't cook on the Sabbath day? Raise your hand. All right, let's get to selling. How many say we shouldn't be selling on the Sabbath day? Raise your hand.
Should not.
Should not sell. Now, all right, good. How many says that we can cook on the Sabbath day? Raise your hand. Can cook. How many say you can't cook? Raise your hand.
Can you say cannot?
Can you say cannot?
How many say we cannot? All right. How many says, then the next question, what work should be done? And we mainly dealt with can we go out on an occupation on the Sabbath day? How many say you can?
Cannot.
Cannot go on an occupation or job on a Sabbath day? Raise your hand. All right. How many say not an occupation work, but you're just working around the house? How many say that's permissible? Raise your hand. Yeah.
Washing your car.
Washing your car.
Tilling your garden.
Cutting the yard. watering the grass.
Something that is not, neither Malacca or Avoda.
Yeah, we ain't talking about we ain't talking about the language.
Planting your garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Plucking up what's already planted.
Is there any kind of work before I go to the next one that you would like to ask? Can we do?
I'm sticking with the scripture. The scripture says that no Avoda and Malacca. That's what the scripture says. So as far as that's concerned, you cannot do it.
All right. And some people don't understand the big words. What are you saying you can? So we can get it.
We went through that. I'm not trying to go through that again.
All right, good enough. Now let's go right here.
Malacca and Avoda.
All right, good. Now number 3. Are there different types of Sabbaths? How many say they're not? How many say they are? Yes. Okay. Can we keep the Passover in this land, such as killing a goat? Those that say you can, raise your hand. Or a sheep. How many say you can't? Raise your hand.
It sounds like the same both times.
You sound the same.
They cannot.
All right, good enough. Let me make, from now on, nobody gonna get me confused. How many say that it's all right? How many say
memorial is something different?
all right, all right. We know what we discussed that. So I'm breaking them down very simple. How many says that on the Passover day it's okay to go and get you a goat and kill it and cook it and eat it and celebrate your Passover in your house? Okay. How many says you can't, Rick?
Okay. You say you can't kill a Passover?
You can't kill a Passover.
You can't kill a lamb and eat it on Passover. Cannot.
No, you can't go out on the 10th day, take a lamb.
Oh, he didn't say all that. He didn't ask all that.
Well, that was.
But that's not what he asked.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to. That's why I should be specific.
I thought I was being specific. Let me be very specific. On the Passover day, that we know is the Passover day, the 14th day of even of the 14th, is it permissible for us to go and buy or get us a lamb or goat and kill it and cook it and with unleavened bread and the bitter herbs and say that we're keeping the memorial of the Passover? How many says that's okay? Okay, how many say it's not okay? No, I'm not saying the same thing.
No.
I'm just saying before. All right, good. Now, number 5. As far as the feast of, condense this real fast, the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles were days that it is recorded you must celebrate it in the place that Yah shall choose. How many believe that it's okay to keep it here and observe it here in this land? Raise your hand.
Memorial of it?
In doing it as it is done in the scriptures. Saying and calling it a holy convocation, sanctifying it, doing as written in the scriptures.
Can't.
We never discussed what you can do.
We discussed a lot of stuff we voted on.
We discussed.
We discussed what you can do. We didn't discuss what you can do. Because we did come to an agreement that it was a holy day. And that you had to set it aside. Now, what can you do on that day? We didn't discuss.
No, we didn't agree on what all we can do. But we agreed that we can't do certain things. You understand? We agreed, or we discussed certain things that we can't do. We did discuss that lengthily.
If the question is, can we do these days as they are written in the scriptures, then the answer is no.
All right. Can we keep the Day of Atonement in this land?
As it's written in the scriptures.
As it's written in the scriptures, with the exception of...
No, that's not right. That's what you're doing. That's not fair.
I'm trying to show you a note. So we're not here trying to, we're just trying to find out what's right and what's wrong. Put it this way, to try to simplify everything. We're not able to make any burnt offerings in this land. So we're taking the burnt offerings out. Because with all of these feast days, there was a burnt offering. So we're going to exclude the burnt offering. Outside of the burnt offering, would it be okay to celebrate the tabernacle, Feast of Tabernacle here in America? Who says it is? Raise a hand.
Celebrate it as it's written in the scriptures.
Outside of the burnt offering.
Well, as it's written in the scriptures, it's celebrated in Jerusalem, so obviously you can't do that.
You can't do it. That's right. So you're not only the restriction with burnt offering, but it was at Jerusalem. Likewise, the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Tabernacle and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Outside of the burnt offering, it was only at Jerusalem. Can we keep the Day of Atonement here in America outside of the sacrifice with fire? Can we keep that? How many say you can? Raise your hand.
You can't, but that's not the only exception. If you make that as the only exception, then no, you can't, because there also was a goat that had to be executed.
Well, I said outside of
that.
That wasn't a sacrifice then.
That wasn't a sacrifice.
That was one of the release. So if you make that exception also, then the answer would be yes. If you don't make that exception, the answer would be no.
But let me come in right while we have a few minutes. With the goat, the two goats that were brought, that was only by the priest too. They were brought to the altar to the priest. And he pronounced the sins of people one head, and they killed the other, sent one out. That was done only by the priest. I'm talking about the things that are not done by the priest, such as the altar, the sacrifice.
That's why I wanted to get that clarification.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that. Outside of the work that the priests do, can you keep the Day of Atonement in America? Rest. Can you keep the new moons in America? Yes, but not as holy convocation. We already decided how many ways it is that we thought of thus far to break these commandments. Can we travel on holy convocation days to go to the meetings?
Yes.
Can we teach on the Sabbath day?
Yes.
Then we have taken care of all of our business today. And for those that wish to come and join in for a discussion so we can rehash and get everybody's points of view from the audience and let y'all come and shoot at us, y'all can come after we come back from dinner and lunch. And what time, where's Yehoshua? What time do y'all want to come back, 9 or 9:30? 9:30. Will that give y'all enough time to be? What time does it get dark here?
About 20 or 9.
Huh? We're good. It's 2 minutes after 6. Those that want to join in on our discussion, be back in this room at 9:30. 9:30. And for those that go ahead. Well, they did. What time does the sun go down here?
About 8:40.
8:40? Yeah. It's dark at 9.
As a holy convocation. We can keep it, but not as a holy convocation. I know, you can't keep it as a holy convocation, but it's not. But you can observe it, but not as a holy convocation. Now, and if we get through these fast enough, I assure you we'll.
On the other hand, blood transfusion, you have to be clear, because any injection is a transfusion. So we're talking specifically about a blood transfusion, I hope. A blood transfusion, the blood is not consumed and is transfused in the blood. It circulates throughout the body and continues to put 5 quarts in, like I said, you get 5 quarts in. It's not consumed. So there's a clear difference in my mind between what's eating and consumption and what's being done with a transfusion, where the material, the blood being transfused is not consumed. It's not done with.
My question would be, when it comes to a blood transfusion, then what happens to Israel, when Israel go and get a blood transfusion, blood comes from a heathen. Because you don't know who blood you're getting.
But
You understand what I'm saying?
So what law says that you can't get blood from heathen?
I'm asking a question, bro.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking
I want to answer your question.
So you can bring it here to me.
I don't want to answer your question with a question.
I do ask a question. I will give you a question.
I think that this question brings up a lot of issues, right? And it's not clearly stated in the Torah that one can't give blood or donate blood or even have a blood transfusion. Well, we know that the Creator is pro-life. He said that he did not find any favor in the death of a man. But now this man got hurt some kind of way to have his life taken from him or to be in that position to be dying where he would need a blood transfusion. Again, I kind of lean back to the same understanding like I had earlier to the mingling of the seeds. When you take from a man's body and put it into another man's body that doesn't belong, it's not his. Even if the blood type matches, it's not his. The question came up, what if you take the blood of a heathen and put it in an Israelite? Would that be acceptable? My answer would be no. Because your blood is going to be a makeup of whatever it is that you consume in your life in your stages of development, is what your blood is going to do. And not only that, we are Israelites by blood. Our blood that flows through our veins is what makes us the children of Israel because of the blood that we have. Now, if this is so, if this blood lineage is so important, that means that if I give a transfusion to a white man and his blood is completely consumed and now my blood is in his body, then that would make him an Israelite no matter who his father is. And if not, it will cause a problem. I mean, it will cause a question.
How good is it when all of us can dwell together in unity? How good is it when all of us can dwell together? And whoa, it's like the ointment upon the head that run down, even on Aaron's bed. It's like the ointment upon the head that run down the skirt of his garments. It's like the dew that descends from the hills of Mount Zion. The dew, UNITY forevermore. Unity is life forevermore. Forevermore.
Yo, y'all bring us all together. I remember when we were strong together. Wonder back then if we knew one day we fall together. How good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity. Through all the scrutiny, overcame, remain a community. Beauty to see, always anointed. It's like the precious ointment upon the head of Iran. No residue of Hermon that descended upon Mount Zion. Living blessings forevermore. It's about that time. Let's go.
Say, blessed is the nation that gathers until the mighty Yahweh as the people been scattered. Until our pride drop as the dew that ran down Aaron's beard. We Yahweh's weapon of war when all together we spears. Let's cry aloud, exalt the Holy One in heaven. Return to his laws, statutes, and judgments. Our only message, we pay reverence to his sanctuary. Praise Yah at all times until his messengers will see eye to eye. Oh, how good.
How good is it when all of us can dwell together in unity? How good is it when all of us can dwell together? And whoa, it's like the ointment upon the head that run down, even on the remember that first day I walked into that brown building. I remember the first day, that's where I get my spiritual healing. I remember hearing Dawid and the 12 tribes bringing fire. Who would've known it 10 years later I'd be singing higher? You got there at 3 o'clock and it was standing room only. My heart just leaves my soul because that building now so lonely. Members Zebulon and Absalom and Hezekiah, Ema Peora, Mother Mary, can't forget Tobiah. When 4 o'clock came, Moreh, Elesha at that top door. Brother Dan and Elder Dinah, my spirit getting fed more. But then we went and split that. I pray that we can get back the unity in Cincinnati, man, I swear I missed that. Come on, like, how good is it when all of us can dwell together in unity? How good is it when all of us can dwell together? Whoa, it's like the ointment upon the head that run down, even on Aaron's bed. It's like the ointment upon the head that run down, the skirt of his garments. It's like the dew that descends from the hills of Mount Zion. The dew, UNITY forevermore. Unity is life forevermore.